woman walked in and asked if the aisle that repeats was still looping. It was 2:17 a.m., and the store had already slipped into that hour where everything felt staged. The fluorescents hummed overhead, steady, clinical, but there was a softness to the light that didn't belong. Like it had been running too long. Like it was tired. I was behind the counter, halfway through counting loose change from the register, when the automatic doors sighed open and she stepped inside. No chime. That was the first thing I noticed. The sensor always chimed. Always. Even for stray gusts of wind or a plastic bag skidding past the threshold. But this time, nothing. Just the quiet inhale of the doors parting, and her walking through like she'd been there already. She didn't look at the shelves. Didn't hesitate. Came straight to the counter. Her coat was damp at the hem, though it hadn't rained. Is it still looping? She asked. Her voice was calm, almost polite. Like she was asking if we had a certain brand of milk in stock. I blinked at her. Sorry. The aisle, she said. The one that repeats. I let out a small laugh, reflexive, unsure. We don't. Nothing like that here. She studied me for a moment. Not suspicious. Not annoyed. Just measuring. Someone told me it was here, she said. Late hours. After 2. That's just. I stopped myself. The word rumor felt too heavy to say out loud. Instead, I shrugged. Probably someone messing with you. Her gaze shifted past me, toward the rows of shelves stretching into the back of the store. I've been in one before, she said. The hum of the lights seemed to dip, just slightly. I forced another smile. Yeah, she nodded once. It doesn't loop cleanly, she said. People always expect a perfect circle. It's not like that. Something in the way she said it made my hands still on the coins. It stutters, she continued. Repeats parts. Skips others. Like a sentence you almost remember. I swallowed. You lose track of where you started. Sounds like you got turned around, I said, too quickly. Her eyes came back to mine. No, she said. I didn't. A pause. Then, softer. Are you sure it isn't happening here? I glanced over her shoulder. Aisle 3, snacks. Aisle 4, canned goods. Aisle 5, household items. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I think you've got the wrong place, I said. She held my gaze for a second longer. Then she nodded, like I'd confirmed something she already knew. All right, she said. She turned away from the counter and walked toward the aisles. I watched her go. She didn't grab a basket. Didn't look at prices. She just moved. Slowly, deliberately, down aisle 4. Canned goods. I leaned slightly to keep her in view. Halfway down, she stopped. Tilted her head. Then stepped forward. And vanished. Not in a sudden way. Not like a trick. It was quieter than that. One step forward, and her shape seemed to thin at the edges, like she'd slipped behind a reflection I couldn't see. The fluorescent light didn't catch her the same way anymore. And then she was just gone. The aisle was empty. I stood there for a long moment, waiting for her to reappear at the far end. She didn't. I came out from behind the counter. Hello. My voice sounded wrong. Too close to my own ears. Like it hadn't traveled through the air properly. I walked toward aisle 4. The floor tiles clicked under my shoes, but the echoes came back a half-second late. Not unusual, I told myself. Just the acoustics. Just the hour. I turned into the aisle. Cans lined both sides. Soup, beans, vegetables. Labels facing forward in neat, repetitive rows. The air felt cooler here. Ma'am. No response. I walked halfway down. Nothing. At the end of the aisle, I turned and looked back toward the front of the store. The counter was visible. The doors. The dull glow of the street outside. Everything was where it should be. I exhaled. She left. I muttered. Just walked out when I wasn't looking. That had to be it. I turned to head back. And paused. A can of tomatoes sat on the floor. I didn't remember seeing it before. It was centered in the aisle, label facing up. I crouched and picked it up. Cold. Colder than it should have been. I set it back on the shelf. Top row, between 2 identical cans. Then I turned and walked back to the front. Behind the counter, I checked the entrance. Still no chime. The doors were closed. The street outside was empty. I looked at the clock. 2:23 a.m. 6 minutes had passed. It felt like less. I shook my head and went back to counting change. A minute later, I heard something. A soft clink. Metal on tile. From the aisles. I froze. Another clink. I set the coins down. Walked back out. Aisle 4. The can was on the floor again. Same spot. Same orientation. I stared at it. No, I said quietly. I stepped forward, picked it up again. This time, I turned it over in my hands. Same label. Same barcode. Same faint dent near the bottom edge. I placed it on a different shelf. Lower this time. Pushed it all the way to the back. I stayed there, watching. Nothing moved. The hum of the lights pressed in. After a moment, I turned. And the can was on the floor again. Behind me. I hadn't heard it fall. My breath caught. I looked at the shelves. Everything else was undisturbed. Just the one can. Centered. Waiting. I stepped back slowly. The aisle felt longer than before. I couldn't see the front of the store as clearly. The light seemed stretched. I turned and walked out. Faster this time. Back to the counter. I didn't look behind me. I didn't want to see if the aisle followed. I checked the clock. 2:23 a.m. It hadn't changed. I stared at it. Waited. The seconds ticked forward. 2:24. Relief flooded through me, thin and temporary. Okay. I whispered. Okay. Just tired. Just. A sound cut through the store. Footsteps. From the aisles. Not mine. Slow. Measured. I leaned over the counter, peering down the rows. Hello. The footsteps stopped. Then resumed. But closer. Too close. Like they'd skipped part of the distance. I stepped out from behind the counter again. This time, I moved toward aisle 3. Snacks. Halfway down, I saw movement. A figure. My chest tightened. Ma'am. The figure stepped into view. It was her. The woman. But something was off. Her coat was dry now. Her hair slightly different, like it had settled in another pattern. She looked at me. But her expression didn't match. It lagged. Her face held neutral for a fraction too long before shifting into recognition. You're still here, she said. Her voice echoed. Twice. The second echo didn't match the first. Yeah, I said. Did you leave? She frowned slightly. I just came in. No, I said. You were. I stopped. She tilted her head. The aisle, she said. Is it still looping? The same words. The same tone. But not quite the same. There was a faint distortion under her voice, like another version of the sentence was trying to speak at the same time. I told you, I said slowly. We don't. I trailed off. Because I wasn't sure anymore if I had. Her eyes flicked past me. Toward aisle 4. Canned goods. Have you checked? She asked. A beat. I don't think you have. Did I? I remembered the can. The floor. But that felt thinner now. Like a memory I'd borrowed. She took a step past me. Wait, I said. She didn't stop. She moved into aisle 4. I followed. The air dropped in temperature as soon as I crossed the threshold. The shelves seemed taller. Or maybe closer. The space between them tighter than it should have been. She walked ahead of me. Halfway down, she stopped. This is where it starts, she said. Starts what? She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the floor. The can. Still there. Exactly where it had been. I hadn't moved it. I was sure of that now. Do you see it? She asked. Yes, I said. It's a marker, she said. Or it tries to be. For what? For the difference. She stepped forward. Past the can. I hesitated. Don't, I said. She didn't listen. She took another step. And the aisle shifted. Not visibly. Not in a way I could describe. But something slipped. Like a frame dropped in a video. She was suddenly farther away than she should have been. Then closer. Then gone. I rushed forward. Hey. The aisle stretched. The shelves on either side seemed to repeat. Same labels, same arrangement, same tiny imperfections. I passed the spot where she'd vanished. Kept walking. The end of the aisle should have been a few steps ahead. It wasn't. It kept going. My footsteps echoed. Out of sync. One step. Then another echo, slightly delayed. Then a third, quieter, like someone behind me was walking a fraction of a second later. I stopped. The echoes stopped. But not all at once. One more step echoed after I'd already stood still. I turned around. The aisle behind me looked identical to the one ahead. Same shelves. Same cans. Same can on the floor. Centered. How? My voice came out thin. I walked back toward it. Counted my steps. 10, 15, 20. The can didn't get closer. I turned again. Walked the other direction. Same result. The aisle wasn't looping. It was overlapping. Repeating segments of itself, stitched together wrong. I reached out and touched a shelf. Cold metal. Solid. I grabbed a can and pulled it free. Turned it in my hands. Beans. I set it on the opposite shelf. A different place. Something changed. Subtle. The air tightened. The lights flickered. Not off, but out of rhythm. I looked back. The can I'd just moved was still in my hand. I hadn't set it down. Or, I had. Both felt true. I dropped it. It hit the floor. Rolled. Stopped. Centered. Same spot. Same orientation. My chest tightened. This isn't. A voice cut in. Behind me. You're seeing it now. I turned. She stood there. But not quite. There were two of her. Not side by side. Overlapping. One slightly delayed from the other. Their movements almost aligned. Almost. Which one are you? I asked. She smiled faintly. That's the wrong question. Her voice echoed. 3 times. Each echo slightly different. It doesn't trap people, she said. The second version of her spoke before the first finished. Copies them. The third finished the sentence. Badly at first. I stepped back. My foot hit something. The can. I hadn't moved. Or I had. The memory slipped. The aisle seemed to breathe. Expanding. Contracting. Every pass, she said. They said, it gets better. Better at what? Keeping you. The lights dimmed. Just a fraction. I felt something shift inside my head. A thought. Familiar, repeating. You're still here. Had I said that? Or had she? Or, I blinked. The aisle snapped. For a moment, everything aligned. One version of her. One set of shelves. One can. Then it slipped again. More versions. More echoes. I saw myself. At the far end of the aisle. Standing. Watching. My breath caught. I looked confused. Like I had a moment ago. Or would. Or. This is where it expands, she said. Each loop. Another me appeared. Closer. Then another. Each slightly off. Different posture. Different expression. Different timing. They weren't walking. They were being placed. Copied. Layered. Stop it, I said. But I didn't know who I was saying it to. The aisle stretched again. I felt my sense of direction peel away. Front and back stopped meaning anything. There was only repetition. Indifference. Tiny. Accumulating differences. The can. The shelves. The lights. Me. I looked at my hands. For a second, there were 2 sets. Offset. Then they merged. I stumbled. The floor felt wrong. Like it wasn't sure where to be. You can still leave, one of her said. Another shook her head. No, he can't. The third watched me silently. Which one is right? I asked. They all smiled. Eventually, they said together, it won't matter. The echoes of their voices didn't align. They stacked. Built. A chorus of almost the same. I backed away. Turned. Ran. The aisle didn't end. It reconfigured. Snapped me forward. Back to the same spot. The can. Always the can. Marker. Difference. I grabbed it. Held it tight. Stop. I said. The word echoed. Then echoed again. But the second echo was mine. From a different place. I turned. Another me stood there. Holding a can. Looking at me. We spoke at the same time. Stop. The sounds overlapped. Didn't match. He stepped forward. I stepped back. Or I stepped forward and he stepped back. The memory split. The aisle pulsed. I felt something copy. Not my body. Not exactly. Something underneath. A pattern. A sequence. A version. The lights flickered again. And for a brief, perfect moment, everything aligned. One aisle. One me. One can. One memory. I was at the counter. The clock read 2:17 a.m. The doors slid open. No chime. A woman walked in. She approached. Her coat damp at the hem. She looked at me. And I felt something in my head settle. Like a groove worn too deep. A woman walked in and asked if the aisle that repeats was still looping. My voice said it, not hers. I blinked. She tilted her head. Sorry, she said. I stared at her. Behind her, the aisle stretched. Just slightly too long. The lights hummed. Out of sync. I think. I began. Then stopped. Because I wasn't sure if I was remembering this. Or repeating it. Somewhere, deep in the store, something shifted. A shelf resetting. A can rolling. A footstep echoing a moment too late. I looked at the woman. Really looked. There was a faint delay in her expression. A softness at the edges. Like she hadn't fully settled into place yet. Is it still looping? She asked. The words felt familiar. Too familiar. I opened my mouth. Paused. And in that pause, I felt it. The copies. Not just behind me. Not just ahead. But outward. Beyond the aisles. Beyond the store. Each loop not closing. But branching. Spreading. Imperfect at first. Then better. Then indistinguishable. I realized then. The aisle didn't trap people. It didn't even keep them. It made them. Again. And again. And sent them outward. Slightly wrong. Slightly delayed. But learning. Improving. Expanding. I looked at her. At the question. At the moment repeating. And I understood. This wasn't the beginning of the loop. It was just one version of it. And somewhere, in another aisle, another store, another hour, someone else was already answering. I forced a smile. No, I said. But the word echoed. Not behind me. Not ahead. Somewhere else. Somewhere further out. Already changing. The store's receipt paper printed a list of things I've never done yet. It started as a joke. That's what I told myself, anyway. It was just after 1:40 a.m., the dead center of the night shift, when time stops moving forward and starts circling itself. The convenience store was empty, humming under fluorescent lights that never fully turned off, just dimmed and flickered like something breathing in its sleep. I was behind the counter, leaning on one elbow, scrolling through nothing on my phone. The receipt printer chirped. A short, mechanical sound, familiar, automatic. I glanced up. No one at the counter. No items scanned. The register screen was idle. Still, the printer whirred and spat out a strip of paper, curling slightly as it dropped into the tray. Okay, I muttered. Sometimes it printed diagnostics. Or glitched. Or picked up some phantom signal from the system. I reached over and tore it off. The paper was warm. I unfolded it. At first, it looked normal. Store name at the top. Address. Date. But instead of items and prices, there was a list. Plain text. No numbers. No formatting. Just lines. I frowned and read. Leave the store without locking the door. Forget the keys on the counter. Turn off the lights before closing. Walk into the aisle and not come back. I stared at the last one. The hum of the lights seemed to dip, just slightly. Not funny, I said under my breath. There was no one there to hear it. I turned the receipt over. Blank. No total. No barcode. Just the list. System error, I decided. I crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash beneath the counter. The store settled again. The refrigerators along the back wall clicked and cycled, a low mechanical chorus. The security camera monitor above the register showed 4 black and white views: entrance, counter, aisles, stockroom door. All empty. I went back to my phone. A minute passed. Then the printer chirped again. I froze. The sound was sharper this time. Intentional. I looked up slowly. Still no one. The register hadn't changed. But the printer was already feeding out another strip. I stood there for a moment, not moving, watching it print. Line by line. Like it was thinking. When it stopped, I reached over more carefully this time. Tore it off. Unfolded it. The same header. The same date. New lines. Look at the cameras longer than necessary. Notice the delay. Don't mention it. Keep watching. My chest tightened. I glanced up at the security monitor. 4 feeds. All normal. Except the entrance camera. Something was off. The doors were closed. The reflection of the interior lights faint in the glass. But when I shifted my weight, the figure on the screen, the version of me behind the counter, moved a fraction of a second late. I stopped. On the screen, I stopped a beat after. I swallowed. Just lag, I said quietly. Old system. Cheap wiring. I looked back down at the receipt. The last line wasn't there anymore. Or, I didn't think it was. Had it said something else before? I tried to remember. The words felt slippery. Like they hadn't settled. I set the receipt on the counter. The paper curled slightly at the edges, as if reacting to something unseen. I forced myself to look away. Checked the aisles. Still empty. The clock above the register read 1:47 a.m. 7 minutes gone. Felt like less. I rubbed my eyes. You're tired, I said. Out loud. To anchor it, the sound of my voice came back too quickly. Like it hadn't traveled through the store at all. I glanced toward the aisles. For a moment, I thought I heard footsteps. But they stopped before I could be sure. Silence again. Then, the printer chirped. Louder. I flinched. Okay, I said. Okay, that's enough. I grabbed the new receipt before it finished printing, tearing it free mid-line. The bottom edge was jagged. The text cut off. I scanned what I could read. Check the back door twice. Think about leaving early. Decide not to. Wonder why. My breath slowed. That wasn't wrong. I had thought about leaving early. Just briefly. A passing thought. I hadn't said it. Hadn't acted on it. But there it was. Printed. Fixed. I looked up at the back of the store. The stockroom door sat closed, unremarkable. But now I couldn't remember if I'd checked it earlier. I always did. At the start of the shift. But the memory wasn't solid. It felt suggested. Like I'd been told I had, and accepted it. I set the receipt down. Walked around the counter. Each step felt slightly ahead of the sound it made. My shoes hit the tile, and the click followed a fraction later. I stopped. The sound caught up. I took another step. Same thing. I kept walking. Didn't look back. At the stockroom door, I hesitated. The handle was cold. I turned it. The door opened with a soft creak. Inside, darkness, shelves, boxes. Nothing out of place. I flipped the light on. Fluorescent flicker. Everything normal. I exhaled. See, I said, nothing. But the word sounded rehearsed. Like I'd already said it once. I closed the door. Turned back toward the counter. Halfway there, I heard it. A soft, steady sound. Paper feeding. I stopped. The printer. Again. I hadn't scanned anything. Hadn't touched the register. But the sound continued. Longer this time. I walked faster. By the time I reached the counter, the receipt had grown long enough to drape over the edge, nearly touching the floor. I grabbed it. It kept printing. The paper slid through my fingers, warm, endless. Stop, I said, pressing the feed button. Nothing happened. The printer ignored me. Line after line appeared. I tried to read them as they came. Say it out loud. Don't say what you're thinking. Think about the silence. Notice it's not empty. I pulled the paper free again. It tore unevenly, leaving a strip still hanging from the machine. The last line was incomplete. Realize the so. I stared at it. What? The store hummed. The lights flickered. For a moment, everything dimmed, not off, just less. And in that dimness, I saw my reflection in the glass of the refrigerator doors. Standing behind me, not quite matching. My posture was slightly different. My head tilted a few degrees more than it should have been. I didn't move. The reflection did. A second later, I turned slowly. Nothing behind me. I looked back at the glass. The reflection was back in sync. Perfectly aligned. Like nothing had happened. I swallowed. Okay, I said. But I didn't believe it anymore. I picked up the receipt again. The lines had changed. Not all of them. Just a few. Say it out loud. Don't say what you're thinking. Think about the silence. Notice it's not waiting. That wasn't what it said before. Was it? I tried to remember. The earlier version slipped away. Replaced. Like it had never existed. The printer chirped again. Short. Almost impatient. Another strip fed out. I didn't want to look. But I did. I always did. Lock the front door early. Watch the reflection instead of the room. Think about what you could do. Don't do it. My hands tightened on the paper. What I could do. The words felt heavier. Closer. Like they belonged to me. I glanced at the front door. Locked. No, unlocked. I wasn't sure. I walked over. Checked it. It was locked. But I didn't remember locking it. Had I just done it? Or was I remembering something that hadn't happened yet? I stepped back. The door didn't reflect me immediately. For a split second, it showed the empty store. Then I appeared. Late. I looked away. The receipt in my hand crinkled softly. I smoothed it out. More lines had appeared. They hadn't printed. They were just there. Think about unlocking the door. Imagine someone coming in. Picture what happens next. Decide not to. My breathing slowed. Deliberate. Measured. I'm not doing anything, I said. The words felt like a defense. Against something I hadn't accused myself of yet. The printer made a low, continuous sound. Not printing. Waiting. I stepped back to the counter. Set the receipt down. It shifted slightly. Not from air. From something internal. Like the words were rearranging. I leaned closer. One line blurred. Then sharpened. Changed. Decide not to. Became. Decide not yet. My chest tightened. That's not. But I didn't finish. Because the thought had already formed. Not yet. The store seemed to respond. The lights flickered in a slower rhythm. The hum deepened. Like something settling into place. I looked at the receipt again. More lines. Think about the back door. Consider leaving it open. Imagine not noticing. Let it happen. I shook my head. No. But the word came out softer than before. Less certain. I tried to remember the earlier lists. The first one. The things I'd never done. They felt distant now. Less relevant. These new lines. They felt closer. Immediate. Like instructions. No. Not instructions. Suggestions. I backed away from the counter. The printer remained still. Silent. As if it didn't need to print anymore. I looked at the camera monitor. The feeds were slightly out of sync with each other. Each one lagging by a different fraction. In one, I stood still. In another, I was mid-step. In a third, I hadn't entered the frame yet. And in the fourth, I was already gone. I stared at that one. The empty counter. The receipt still lying there. Unattended. My throat tightened. That's not. But the sentence didn't finish. Because it might be. I looked back at the real counter. The receipt. The lines were still shifting. One disappeared. Another took its place. Leave the counter. Walk into the aisle. Don't come back. The words felt familiar. Like I'd seen them before. At the beginning. Or the end. Or. I stepped back. The floor clicked under my shoes. The sound came a moment early this time. Anticipating the step. I froze. The echo came after. Late. Out of place. The store wasn't just lagging. It was misaligned. Time wasn't slipping. It was being arranged. I looked at the receipt one last time. The lines settled. Stopped changing. For a moment. Clear. Final. Think about it. Decide. Act. I understood then. It wasn't predicting anything. It wasn't telling me what I would do. It was narrowing it. Mapping the space between thought and action. Removing the distance. The earlier lists. They weren't random. They were possibilities. Now, they were fewer. Sharper. Closer. I felt the thought form. Uninvited. What happens if I walk into the aisle? The receipt trembled. A new line appeared. Find out. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. And in that second, I saw it. Not the aisle. Not the store. But the structure underneath. Choices. Not branching. Converging. Folding inward. Every thought a step. Every step reducing the rest. When I opened my eyes, the store looked the same. But it wasn't. It was ready. The lights hummed in anticipation. The reflections watched. The cameras waited. I picked up the receipt. It was warm, steady, certain. I didn't crumple it this time. I didn't throw it away. I held it, read it, accepted it, because I understood, finally. It wasn't showing me what might happen. It was showing me what I was already leaning toward. What I was already becoming. The printer chirped once more. Soft. Satisfied. A final strip slid out. Short. I tore it off. Read it. One line. Continue. I looked toward the aisles. They stretched quietly. Unremarkable. Patient. I took a step. The sound followed. Perfectly in sync now. No delay. No anticipation. Just alignment. Behind me, the receipt curled slightly. As if settling into place. And for the first time since it started, nothing changed. Because there was nothing left to adjust. The store wasn't printing possibilities. It was preparing them. And I had already chosen.